Convicted killer Scott Peterson is officially off death row. Today, a judge in San Mateo County resentenced him to life in prison without parole for the murder of his pregnant wife. So what happens next? Our legal expert and criminal defense attorney, Paula Canny, joining us now to talk a little bit about what happened today and what we can look forward to here in the future. It was said Scott was supposed to speak today during this resentencing, but we did not hear him speak. Do you think that that was the right call, Paula?
Well, it's complicated. No, for today's proceeding, of course, it was appropriate that Scott didn't testify or didn't speak. It was a resentencing. I mean, there was no discretion here. The judge had only one option, and that option was to sentence Scott Peterson to life without the possibility of parole. So it was intense. I went down there and looked around. It was, again, tons of media people. The courtroom was almost empty, though, because of COVID protocols. Lacey Peterson's family sat together in the jury box. Scott Peterson's friends and family sat behind Scott Peterson. The remarkable thing about everything is that Scott actually hasn't aged a bit. He looks good, actually. It's crazy. But in terms of, what happens next, there is a pending hearing on a writ of habeas corpus related to juror misconduct. And that is critical. Today, after the judge sentenced Scott Peterson to life without the possibility of parole, she specifically ordered that Scott Peterson remain at the San Mateo County Jail to prepare for the upcoming habeas proceeding. Now, his appellate lawyers have argued that there was juror misconduct. Now, juror misconduct occurs anytime a juror conceals relevant facts or gives false answers during voir dire. That's juror misconduct. In this case, juror number 7, the one they called Strawberry Spice, committed juror misconduct. She wasn't truthful in that voir dire proceeding. And so when there's juror misconduct, it raises a presumption of prejudice. And so that's what this court's going to have to decide. Judge Macello, who now is a newly appointed judge from San Francisco, because recall, Judge DeLucchi has died since, this verdict from some 17 or 18 years ago. So that proceeding is scheduled to last several days. It's set in the end of February, and that's super complicated legally because there's this whole argument. Are you going to give juror number 7 immunity? That is, immunity from being prosecuted for perjury, because arguably she committed perjury when she wasn't truthful during voir dire. Because remember, you're under oath when you answer those questions. Right. So legally, just like everything about this case is complicated and messy, this is also super complicated and messy. And my 2 cents worth is that I think the judge absolutely has to order a new trial. You can't have jurors not be truthful. You can't have people lie and then sit on a jury and then advocate for conviction. It undermines the whole process. The other thing that I've thought about all this is that I don't know at what point the prosecution understood that they had a juror who had not told the truth. Right. Because it's remarkable that she wasn't prosecuted for perjury. I mean, that's just really crazy. Okay.
It is. So potentially what you're saying is not only may Scott Peterson get a new trial, but this juror that all of this is even coming from and the potential for him to get this, she might be in trouble here too and might receive some punishment.
Well, kind of. I'm saying to you that when she wasn't truthful in 2004, when she filled that out, all these, forms out and didn't tell the truth, denied that she'd ever been a victim, denied she'd ever been a party to a lawsuit, when she had just filled out a request for her own restraining order out of a domestic violence case, okay? that then she could have been prosecuted in the years after. What she did do, what the government, the prosecution had her do, was fill out a declaration. And so that declaration was submitted in these proceedings, and it sort of resurrects this claim. Now she's made a new declaration under penalty of perjury that she didn't know what she was doing. So if I could cross-examine her, or a good lawyer cross-examine her, you basically eviscerate her on that declaration, and then she could be prosecuted for perjury. So the argument is she going to be given immunity before she testifies? And she has a new lawyer, and that lawyer has made clear that he will not let her testify at that proceeding unless she's granted immunity. And so it's complicated because the prosecution doesn't want to grant her immunity, because by doing so, it raises the specter that there is, juror misconduct that cannot be cured.
Right.
And that means he gets a new trial.
And so if he is to get a new trial, that means that he could be sentenced differently or completely
well,
abstained?
that's a great question. And given that he's been sentenced to an LWOP, I think even if he's granted a new trial, I don't think that they could or would redo a death penalty case, because again, the whole reason we're here is because the California Supreme Court said that the way that Judge DeLuca and the prosecution conducted the voir dire, the jury selection in the death penalty jury selection, was flawed, violated California law. It's quite a cumbersome process. I think that they won't do that again, because it's a very time-consuming process. And when Sharon Roach spoke today, she spoke really compellingly. It was really, really, really sad to think about it. But she said they agreed to the life without the possibility of parole. They supported the prosecution's not seeking another death verdict because of the death penalty moratorium in the state of California, and just how emotionally painful this whole process has been for she and her family. It's just so sad.
We also heard outside the courthouse from Scott Peterson's sister-in-law, who has been obviously a large advocate for his innocence, and she was talking about just so much missing evidence in this case, and that's obviously why they would want a new trial. I guess, what do you think we should all be kind of looking for or thinking about as we head towards this next hearing that's coming up in late February?
Well, so it's true that Scott has consistently proclaimed his innocence. What he does admit to is that he had an affair, and he was an idiot guy who had an affair. But he has always said, I did not kill Lacey. I did not kill Connor. I just had an affair. So in terms of the other issues regarding missing evidence and the like, I hear what they're saying. I mean, I reviewed the whole habeas petition and all the appellate briefs. It's like 400 pages by the defense, saying all the things that were wrong with the trial and all the evidence that they weren't allowed to present to the jury in one form or another. And the California Supreme Court has basically ruled that, okay, maybe those things are their claims that the defense has, but the one and only issue for the trial judge, this new trial judge, is going to be whether or not juror number 7 committed misconduct, and whether or not, and when there's a misconduct, there's a presumption of prejudice to the defendant. Is there anything that the prosecution can do to rebut that presumption of prejudice? Because if they can't, by law, Scott Peterson gets a new trial. So my, belief is they're going to focus on that there was juror misconduct. Scott suffered actual prejudice, and under the law, he gets a new trial because of that.
Well, I know we'll continue to chat with you as we get closer to that hearing and once that hearing's all wrapped up. Paula, always a pleasure to have you on and help us sift our way through all the information. We appreciate your time.
Of course. Thanks so much.